So we are diving into a moment of just staggering geopolitical theater.
Absolutely.
Just days ago, the world watched as U.S. Special Forces executed an operation in Caracas, Venezuela, seizing ousted President Nicolás Maduro and his wife, Celia Flores.
A Saturday morning snatch and grab. It sends shockwaves across the globe instantly.
It's an extraordinary event and one that raises so many immediate questions, not just about international law, but, about the fundamental control of resources.
And that's really the core of what we need to unpack today, isn't it?
Exactly. That's our deep dive. We have to look at this in, I think, three distinct layers. First, there's the immediate high-stakes legal drama that's unfolding right now in New York.
Yikes.
Second, the U.S. political claim that this whole operation is about asserting control over Venezuela's massive oil reserves.
And finally, the part that gets lost in the headlines, the cold, hard economic and logistical realities that face Venezuela's energy sector, realities that complicate every single political promise being made.
And our sources give us a really great vantage point for this. We have reporting on the actual court appearance, direct quotes from the president on this, and crucially, some deep analysis from an independent energy expert, Mikhail Katishin.
He provides that essential economic counterpoint to all the political rhetoric.
Okay, let's start with the immediate legal fallout. The speed of this whole thing was just breathtaking.
It really was.
Maduro and Flores were snatched on Saturday, and by Monday morning, they were already being prepared for a court appearance in New York City, scheduled for noon local time.
And the framing is so important here. This wasn't presented as a military action. It was framed as pure law enforcement.
Which is essential for the next step, right? The indictment.
Exactly. And that unsealed indictment that followed was, well, it was explosive. It didn't just charge Maduro.
Who else?
It named his son, three other individuals, and this is the really interesting part, an alleged Venezuelan gang leader.
Wait, a gang leader? Alongside the former president and his family. What is the significance of that?
It's a huge narrative shift. I mean, by linking the president directly to an alleged gang leader, the U.S. is claiming this wasn't just, white-collar theft of state funds.
It's something more.
It's a deeply criminal, organized operation that basically integrated the government with violent drug cartels. The specific charge, you have to remember, is running a corrupt government fueled by a drug trafficking ring.
To do what?
To actively flood the U.S. with tons of cocaine. That's the quote.
So you're turning a geopolitical conflict into a criminal prosecution. You're painting the entire leadership as basically a drug cartel.
Precisely. And the pressure didn't just stop once Maduro was in custody either.
No, I saw that. They immediately started ramping up the pressure on the current interim leader, Delcy Rodriguez.
With a very stark warning that she could face the exact same fate.
So for you, the listener, who is Delcy Rodriguez, and why is she the immediate target now?
Well, Rodriguez is a key figure in the interim government that took power after Maduro's ousting. She represents the immediate political continuity in Caracas.
So by warning her specifically,
the U.S. is sending a signal. This isn't just about one guy, one figurehead. It's about dismantling the entire structure of that government and forcing a clean slate. It establishes a clear line. You either cooperate or you get captured.
That brings us to the political prize, the thing Washington is really talking about, which is much bigger than a court victory.
It's about oil.
It's about oil. Right after the capture, President Trump was very quick to assert that the U.S. was now, and I'm quoting, in charge of Venezuela.
A very direct statement.
And that Washington would assert control over the oil sector. We have to remember, Venezuela has the world's largest proven oil reserves.
The premise is simple then. Regime change equals resource control.
Trump's assessment, according to our sources, was incredibly harsh. He called the country a mess, horribly run. He noted oil was flowing at a very low level.
It's true.
And his plan was just as straightforward. U.S. oil companies would go back in, fix the infrastructure, invest money, and get the crude flowing again.
It sounded like a fast-track solution, solving energy shortages, price volatility, all of it.
That's the political promise. So now let's pivot immediately to the reality check.
This is where the independent analyst Mikhail Katishin comes in. Because when you talk about oil, the first thing you have to establish is scale.
Okay.
Venezuela currently produces less than 1% of the global oil supply.
Less than 1%.
Yeah, less than 1%. And because the current volume is so incredibly low, this political change, the capture, the indictment, the claims of control,
it doesn't matter in the short term.
It will have zero immediate effect on global supply or price. The promise of U.S. control is purely strategic and long-term. It's not a short-term fix for the energy market, not at all.
That low production figure is so key because it forces us to ask, if the U.S. is promising this quick fix, what are the actual physical problems they're walking into?
Right.
We need to understand why these massive reserves have resulted in such a tiny output.
And this is where the logistical deep dive begins, and it's way more complicated than most people realize. The primary issue isn't just bad maintenance, it's geology.
Geology.
The oil in Venezuela is mostly very thick and viscous.
Okay, give us a relatable comparison. If, say, Texas light sweet crude flows like maple syrup, what is Venezuelan heavy crude like?
Think of trying to pour cold molasses
Yeah.
or tar in the middle of winter. It literally refuses to flow into pipes or tankers without serious intervention.
So you can't just pump it out of the ground.
You can't just pump it, you have to mix it.
And what are they mixing it with?
They need diluents, solvents. Specifically, they have to import lighter petroleum products like naphtha, that's NAPHTHA. It's a refined component of crude oil.
And just for clarity, we're talking about the chemical solvent, not the trade agreement.
You're right. Not NAFTA, the trade deal. So the country needs this massive, reliable, and consistent influx of these expensive imported solvents just to make their own oil flow in the first place.
So the U.S. isn't just promising to replace some rusty pipes. They have to bring in advanced technology to handle this heavy crude, and they have to set up a reliable, multi-billion-dollar supply chain of imported solvents.
It sounds like an engineering nightmare before you even look at the money.
Exactly. And the money, the balance sheet is just daunting.
Kutishin gives us some specific figures here that really anchor this reality check. We're talking about needing between $15 and $20 billion in investment.
15 to 20 billion. And what does that get you?
That's just to increase production by 500,000 barrels per day.
$20 billion for 500,000 barrels. That is an immensely high price tag for what is, globally, a pretty small return. That doesn't feel like a quick business case.
It is not. And the timeline makes it even worse. International experts estimate it would take 5 to 10 years to get production back to the 1998 level.
5 to 10 years. That feels like an eternity in politics. Is there any scenario where a massive targeted U.S. investment could cut that time in half? Just throwing overwhelming resources at it.
The consensus is no. You can't just throw money at complex geology and decades of neglect. You have to re-engineer entire fields, replace everything, train a workforce that's mostly left the country.
And reestablish that whole import-export infrastructure for the diluents.
Exactly. The logistical degradation is just too deep. The idea of a quick revamp is simply not supported by the reality on the ground.
All right, so the U.S. claim of an immediate oil takeover runs headfirst into geology, massive cost, and a decade-long timeline. Now, let's connect this to the even bigger picture.
The geopolitical one.
Because American companies aren't just walking into an empty facility, they're replacing entrenched rivals.
And what's fascinating here is the sheer scale of the investment that's already sunk into Venezuela by U.S. rivals. This is where the stakes truly skyrocket.
Okay, like who?
Russia has invested over $17 billion in Venezuela's oil industry.
$17 billion?
And Chinese companies have invested even more, over $20 billion.
So that's a staggering $37 billion combined that they are now potentially watching just evaporate or be seized. That can't sit well in Moscow or Beijing.
Absolutely not. The analyst clearly states these nations will not be very happy to see those investments lost. Any U.S. entry into Venezuela's oil sector immediately creates a huge geopolitical conflict.
Because the U.S. takeover would effectively strand all that capital?
All that capital already committed by their rivals. And making this whole project even harder is the global market itself. It's like a fourth invisible barrier.
What do you mean?
Even if you found U.S. companies willing to spend that $20 billion, is the current global market even ready to support such a risky, high-cost investment?
And the answer is?
Currently, no. We're in a state of global oversupply. The world is producing an excess of about 4 million barrels per day.
4 million extra barrels every day.
Right. And while some of that is being absorbed by, say, China refilling storage, the general excess is depressing global prices.
Let's look at the price trend to really illustrate that point.
Sure. If you look back to May 2022, the price of a barrel was around $120. Today, it's plummeted to about $60.
Wow. Cut in half.
And that downward trend creates a major financing problem. If banks believe the price of oil is going to keep going down, they are simply not going to finance these massive U.S. investments in Venezuela.
Why is that price forecast such a deal breaker for the banks? I mean, given the size of the reserve.
because it triggers what we call the cost trap. If the global price of oil drops below the actual cost of production.
Which for this thick, viscous Venezuelan oil is already really high.
Exactly. It's notoriously high cost to produce. So if the price drops below that cost, then the American oil companies are asking for money for a project that is guaranteed to lose money.
So if it costs you, say, $55 to get a barrel out of the ground and to market, but the bank thinks the global price will be $50.
They're not going to lend you the billions needed to guarantee a loss. It removes all profit potential. The financing just dries up, and without that capital, the 5 to 10-year timeline stretches on, maybe indefinitely.
So that political claim that U.S. companies will rush in and fix everything runs directly into the twin walls of geopolitical resistance and this really unfavorable market.
Yeah. The economic analysis tells us the reality is just incredibly complex and slow-moving, no matter what drama is unfolding in that New York courthouse.
But we do need to address the other side of this, the sovereignty argument.
This is a crucial counterpoint to the entire U.S. action. Outside the New York facility holding Maduro, protesters were gathered.
And what was their message?
They condemned the U.S. operation as illegal. They argued that the U.S. had no right to enter a sovereign country and then openly state they were going to take the oil and take the gold.
That reaction highlights the fundamental conflict here, right?
Yeah.
It goes way beyond just the drug charges.
It does. To many in the region, this U.S. action, regardless of who Maduro is or what he did, is viewed through a historical lens of interventionism.
And the fact that U.S. officials openly said the goal was seizing economic assets.
It just fueled the argument that this was an economic coup dressed up as law enforcement, a violation of national sovereignty.
So, after all this, what does it all mean for you, the listener, right now? We have this high-stakes legal and political drama in the U.S.
But behind it, we have this incredibly challenging economic backdrop. The core takeaway, I think, is this. The political drama is high speed. The economic reality is slow motion. Right. The massive long-term investment required, the looming geopolitical rivals, the unfavorable market conditions, all of it makes the promised takeover so much slower and more expensive than suggested.
Which means the true impact on the global energy market or oil prices won't be felt for, what, 5 to 10 years maybe?
As the analyst suggests, yes. The immediate political claims are far more about geopolitical leverage and signaling dominance to rivals and to that interim government. It's not about actually shifting global energy supply today.
The current moment is about political leverage. The actual energy story is a decade away.
At least.
So we leave you with this final thought, based on that market context we've discussed. If the world's excessive oil supply continues to depress prices, hitting that cost trap we talked about, how will countries like Russia and China adjust their strategies?
Their multi-billion-dollar loans in that high-cost, viscous Venezuelan oil are at risk of becoming stranded assets, entirely non-recoverable.
And that is a deeper question of global finance and geopolitical risk for you to explore as this long, slow economic story begins to unfold.